so we have it for our colleagues. Please make sure you guys are muted. It helps with the feedback that comes with everybody on. And I will share my screen. Give me 1 second. Let's see.
And Kelly, the attendance is on slide 2, correct?
That's correct. Okay. Yeah, so we don't have to keep dropping that in. Let me move this over. Okay. Everybody see my screen okay? We're good. Okay. Give me 1 second, guys. Let me keep the chat up in the side. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the World Study 6 teacher training. This is for teachers who are teaching World Study 6, Global Humanities 6. If you're a special educator, if you are an ESOL teacher that has any stake in World Study 6, this is the correct training. This is the training you should be at. On slide 2 of your of the Google Slides, this is what I've been sharing with you, the timesheets and your attendance. So you do get paid for today and tomorrow's training and the afternoon planning sessions that you have with your PLC. Should you and your PLC decide not to use planning time today, if you have, because I've received this question via email, so I'm going to clarify for all. If you and your PLC have decided to plan next week and use that time, that's okay. You don't need to report to me when you're doing your PLC planning time. You will get paid for it. If you have chosen to divide it up over the course of this week and next week, that's your business and that's totally fine. Nobody is monitoring that and asking you to report specifically on the times in which you are planning with your PLC. What I am asking you to report on and record is your attendance into these live sessions. The attendance is linked on that pink sticky note. That goes to HR. That will first go to my admin secretary, and then she will move it on to HR. This is how you are going to get paid for the trainings. This is a tier 1 pay, so it's your hourly rate of pay. Additionally, please check to make sure your name is on that PDO roster that's linked in there. If you are not in the PDO roster and you are sitting in this training between now and the end of tomorrow's training, I need you to get on PDO and I need you to register in the course that you are taking right now. Otherwise, you are not going to get paid, even if you submit your attendance today. Okay, so yes, you are getting paid 10 hours in total. So 5 for today and 5 for tomorrow. 4 of the hours are live sessions. 6 of the hours are asynchronous PLC planning time. Okay. Did anybody have, so no, you can complete the attendance for tomorrow with tomorrow, Rachel. Okay. Any questions on this? Additionally, if you are planning with your PLC this afternoon or whenever you choose to plan, you are more than welcome to email me. Always use Outlook. I don't use that .NET account too often and not often enough to catch an email. So please email me on Outlook. I'm more than happy to sit into your planning sessions. I'm more than happy to support what you guys are planning. Sorry, I'm reading the chat and talking to you guys at the same time. Okay. So let me get that in there. Here are your slides for today. Yeah. Additionally, I'll be on the call an additional 30 minutes past our ending time. We end at 11 o'clock today. So if you have questions that you feel like you don't need to ask in front of everybody, or you just need a moment to clarify some information with me, I will be on this call until 11:30. And if we need to stay a little bit longer, that's okay as well. Okay. The agendas are linked in there. Day 1, we are on day 1. And our focus of today's training is to really understand the framework that you are going to utilize to figure out what is it I have to teach the students and how long do I need to spend on that content that I'm being directed to teach. And so that's really what we're going to familiarize ourselves with today, is that framework that kind of sets the stage and the foundation for World Study 6. What we can plan on for tomorrow is doing a deeper dive into that with our discussion about the Q1 Common Writing Task, which is the culmination of content and culmination of skill that gets covered in World Study 6, okay? And so before we move on and introduce my colleague that's on here, give you a little bit of information about myself, and we move into our kind of icebreaker together, any questions about slide number 2 that I need to clarify before we move on? Okay, so as I said, good morning, everybody. You should have the slides. And my name is Kelly Champagne. I am the instructional specialist in social studies. I work on 7th grade. So I rolled out 7th grade curriculum 2 years ago. So I know some of you from that. And I know some of you are RTs on here, so I know you as well. I also work on Finance Park, which runs through 7th grade. The Business Challenge, which is for 6th through 8th in middle school, and then World Study 6, which is why I'm here with you. So welcome, and I'm excited to be here and excited for you all to see the new curriculum. On this call as well is my colleague, Andrea. Andrea Speaks is our newest member of the social studies team. She is our elementary specialist. So she's our elementary guru who's going to help support and kind of lead the trainings and rewrites of the new elementary curriculum that will be rolled out over the course of the next couple of years. So Andrea's on the call. Andrea, if you want to say anything, feel free to say hi.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great morning. Sorry for the issue with the slide. My laptop wasn't working properly, and so I copied the slide that I last was working on. So it's working now, so I apologize, but I'm glad to be here with you guys, learn about World Study 6.
Woohoo. All right, thanks, Andrea. Andrea's gonna monitor the chat for me. So if there's something that I need to stop for, whatever the case may be, Andrea can alert me, or you guys can put it in the chat. And so the first thing that I'm going to ask everybody to do, just to kind of get a baseline of where we're at, is this is called the mood meter. And I know that you've been spending time this summer doing conversations and work around social emotional learning for our students as we transition back into in-person 5 days a week instruction. And so this mood meter is something that you can use with your students during a discussion to gauge their reaction about a situation going on at school, to kind of just figure out, where do my students sit with this content, with this skill, with this idea that we're discussing in class. And so your task right now, so you can practice this mood meter, is I want you to review the quadrants and their meaning. So below, you'll see what the red quadrant means, the blue, the green, and the yellow. And I want you to decide right now which quadrant best reflects your feelings about teaching a new curriculum. And then in the chat, when you're ready, I want you to go ahead and type your color. All right, I see a lot of greens coming through, which is great. Greens is telling us that we're in this pleasant, low energy feeling. You're kind of calm, you're relaxed, you're feeling all right about having to engage with and implement and plan for a new curriculum with students. Got some greens and yellows going on, which is good to see. Because the one thing that I want to make sure that these trainings do for you today and tomorrow is to help ease any anxiety you might be feeling, to help clarify any confusion you might have about engaging with a new curriculum. And I think what you'll find is, though you've been doing this curriculum for quite some time, you'll see a lot of similarities between the old stuff and then some new stuff that we've created to upgrade in terms of skills and content to make sure we're meeting needs and demands of our students as they change. So I see a lot of us sitting in green and yellow, which is great. A component of this, and we don't need to do this right now, and we won't do this out loud, but an additional component you can use with students is you can ask them to reflect. If you're having a dialogue with students, you're in a circle, you're doing a discourse, or if you're trying to gauge student reaction to an incident that happened at school, and you have a lot of your students sitting in that red or blue zone, this is a great opportunity to have them reflect on questions about understanding their own emotions so they can regulate and move forward. Part of SEL and our social emotional supports we give students is teaching them how to self-regulate and to identify what these emotions mean, how they make them feel, and what actions they can take to fix or to move through those emotions, which is really important, which some of our students don't have yet. And sometimes even as adults, we don't have, right? Figuring out how to move through your emotions when you're angry or where you're scared or you're anxious. So this is a great tool to use with students. If you click on the mood meter image, it gives you the directions and it puts it in a separate document for you guys to use as well, okay? So again, this was just an opportunity for me to gauge where you are as we enter our conversation about World Study 6, okay? So welcome to all the new participants that have come in. Good, Vicki, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, it's a resource that we used with RTs in social studies to talk about the election and to utilize with students. And I hope that you guys find it useful for your students as well. And so I know that I've been talking a lot. Number one, if you know me, that's me. I talk a lot. I'm kind of long-winded too. Some of the RTs on here will probably chuckle because they know that's true. But I promise you that this training will not just be me going over slides with you. There are opportunities for you to engage with your colleagues. I will push you out into breakout rooms, but these next couple slides is going to be a sit and get. You're just going to have some information that I'm going to share to kind of set some foundational information for you. Okay. So before I move on, is everybody okay? We okay? Awesome. I saw, who was it? Who was that did that? I can't see. Okay, but I saw some thumbs go up. Great. Okay, so here we go. World Study 6. Let's talk about where we've been and where we're going so you guys understand what's going on. First and foremost, if you've been through a 7th or 8th grade curriculum rollout, this is not new information. But for our 6th grade colleagues, this is new information. And so I wanted to make sure we understood what are the goals of the revision related to World Study 6. And the goals relate to skill infusion, relevance, and alignment. We want to make sure that the skills go hand in hand with the content, that they're not a separate component that gets pushed out to students. And so we've tried to streamline and implement and embed skills with our content so students have an opportunity to practice skills that transcend our content, that are great for science and English, and skills to have in evaluating what's real and what's not real in terms of consuming information. We want to make sure that the content we're rolling out is relevant. We want to make sure that students have an opportunity to not only see themselves, but they have an opportunity to make connections to modern day. And so you'll see throughout the curriculum, there's modern day connections put in there, connections to current events, and we're incorporating more inclusive narratives to represent persons of color and our Latin American and Asian American colleagues and students in the curriculum. Last but not least, and probably most important, is we have to make sure we're aligned to the MSDE and Common Core standards. MSDE has an exam in 8th grade. And so in 8th grade, that exam does not cover 6th grade or 7th grade content, but it does cover the skills that we use and embed through 6th and 7th grade. And so that's an important piece to note, is that we're helping prepare for the 8th grade exam by embedding these skills throughout for students. Additionally, kind of to take you through that timeline, we started this process of reviewing and rewriting sixth grade curriculum in July of 2019. In July of 2019, I met with a group of your colleagues who signed up for a salary day, if you can remember when we had to do those, even though it was 2 years ago, a salary day training, and they gave feedback about organization of the content, what should get cut if we have to cut, and how should the units play out, which was invaluable information to me as I moved forward. We had opportunities in November, December, and March, and June to meet with World Study 6 teachers once again, who gave feedback on products that I had available, on the framework, and then were able to kind of direct me as to what I needed to be thinking about, which was great. Additionally, so you might be asking, so Kelly, what have you been doing since, pandemic, and what has been going on with World Study 6? So between July of 2020, when we decided to put World Study 6 on hold, and to present, I have been writing and working with colleagues such as Renee Cowett from Loiterman Middle School on creating lessons that do exactly what I hope those goals are covered in slide 6, which is, making them relevant and having engaging processes for students, and, making sure that we are providing students an opportunity to practice skills. And so that's why we're here in this July training. After this training, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, so when, do we come back together ever again? Can I ever talk to Kelly about this? Can I ask questions? And the answer is always. We will have a follow-up training in December, so I can roll out to you 3 and 4, or at least unit 3. We'll talk about why 4 is kind of on a hold. And then in the summer, I will want a group of teachers to come together to take all that feedback you've given throughout the year to make any adjustments to the curriculum where relevant. And I will compile an ESOL, a group of ESOL teachers to review the curriculum and make additional updates and supports embedded into the curriculum for our ESOL students. Feedback is ongoing. You can give me feedback. You do not have to go through your RT. Should you choose, that is okay. But there's 2 types of feedback that I'll want from you and need from you. If you have an immediate fix, if you say, Kelly, this video is not working, this thing is not linked correctly, something that's impeding or impacting your ability to plan for or implement a lesson, I need you to email me immediately so I can correct that issue. If it's like, hey, Kelly, I have a really awesome idea. I changed up a process that you used. I changed an assessment, or I did something differently with my students, and you want to share that with me, I will have a feedback form on the social studies website for you to share that, so I can then compile it for each quarter and figure out what information is relevant for me to fix. Because just so you guys know, our office writes for 12,000 students. So sometimes I can't take all feedback. And then what information can I put in there that's going to be a great upgrade for all? Okay. Are you always? Yes, I am aware, Rachel, that we are not renewing with Discovery. I haven't used any Discovery education videos in the curriculum, so you should be good to go. And unfortunately, Rachel, that is going to be a decision for your school. Should they want to pick up the tab for Discovery? It was too expensive for the amount of traffic that MCPS was monitoring on that platform. So that was not something that we could do. Sorry, my dog has chosen to use this time to bark. The joys of still being on Zoom, right? Our timeline of instruction, the framework in Unit 1 was shared at the end of June. Unit 2, all but 2 resources have been posted for your viewing pleasure. I know that you guys have nothing else to do right now, and that's all you want to do is look at curriculum, but it is up there for you as well. Unit 3, I don't anticipate November, I anticipate earlier. That is all but written as well. I have 2 products left to go on Unit 3, but we just need it to be in review. And so there's a process of review before it gets posted to the social studies website. So I gave you a date of November just to be safe. And then Unit 4 we have coming in 2022. Unit 4, the state is revamping the standards once again, and we are engaging in a book study related to, oh man, I'm doing good on time, guys. Woohoo! Okay, so I'll take a deep breath. The standards for the Unit 4 related to religion. Currently, I'm in a book study for MSDE called Teaching About Religion in Social Studies Classrooms. They want to be real deliberate and real, not cautious, but if we're making changes to religion and we are making sure that we're updating the standards and the content to really reflect the beliefs and values of our religions today, they want to get it right. And so Unit 4 will be out. I can promise you contractually, it has to be out 4 weeks before implementation. You will get it 4 weeks before implementation, if not sooner. But I wanted to share with you why that was a little bit of a slowdown, on why you don't have a specific date for it coming out to you. Okay, so I'm going to take a breather there before I move into the framework. I'm 5 minutes ahead of schedule, guys. This never happens for me. This is excitement. And so I'm going to take a breather and ask, are there any questions about the slides that I have covered thus far that you want clarification on? Thanks, Rachel. Rachel said no. I was doing my teacher wait time, guys. Are we changing religions? No, we're not changing them. I think we're adding Sikhism to it, but we're just making sure, Justin, we're getting it right. I think some of the information in the old curriculum, I don't think you guys would be surprised if I told you it's a little bit outdated. I know that when I used it in the lessons for continuation of learning, when we made those modules, I had some teachers reach out to me that were concerned about the content that was linked in there, which I lifted from the curriculum, being, oh, you're new. Okay, yes, that's right. You were 7th grade, Justin. So we're not changing anything in terms of, we're still covering the major religions. We're changing the content associated with them to make sure it reflects today's standards and beliefs and values associated with those religions. I hope to get some experts on board as well in crafting that material. We'll talk about that. Oh, thank you. Yes, immersion teachers, you have not been forgotten. My colleagues that are on here for Spanish and French immersion. Yes, I used to be an RT over at Gaithersburg Middle School, which has an immersion program. So I always keep you in my mind. The framework will not be translated into your target language of Spanish or French because that's for you, not students. But the Unit 1 and 2 products have been sent over to world languages. They are currently being translated and will be uploaded to the website for you guys by pre-service for Units 1 and 2. You will have translated material for your students. There's some things that you can expect that you'll have to translate, like if I left a warm-up out or an exit card purposefully because I didn't want to waste the time. You know, they only get so much time and hours to pay teachers to do that translation work. So all of those small stuff that I thought you guys could do easily, like a warm-up, I left for you. But the big stuff, the documents, the student, student organizers, anything like that, I pushed out to get translated. So that translated material will go up in August, mid-August, pre-service week at the latest. We'll talk about that, Natasha. For global humanities, do students do both the DBQ and the CWT? So when we talk framework, we'll talk about that, but Natasha, I'll answer that right now. Global humanities and world studies 6 teachers, your first line of defense, or what we need you to do, is the common writing task. So in Q1 and Q3, you have a common writing task. We ask that World Study 6 and Global Humanities make that their first priority. Global Humanities teachers, if you have time to squeeze in a DBQ in Q1 and 3, please feel free to do so. but your first priority is that common writing task in 1 and 3. Natasha, does that help answer your question?
It does. Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Sure.
Can we make the sources deeper, or do we need to use them as listed for the common writing task? Because I feel
So
like
for the common writing task, because we use the data and put it in Performance Matters, we're going to ask Natasha that you keep the sources as is, except if you need to make adjustments to modify the language for our ESOL students. For students who have an IEP, we understand that there might be some modifications for that, and we're okay with that. We ask that you don't add on to the sources for our global humanities students. If you want a deeper dive into something, please do that separate from the common writing task. We want to make sure that the data reflects essentially students' completion or ability to utilize the same kind of assessment. So we're going to ask that you don't add resources to that. Natasha, if that changes, after we get through this first year, because you guys get feedback to me and you're like, Kelly, listen, we got to go deeper on these sources. If we need to make that change in year 2, we absolutely can. But for this year, Natasha, let's stick with as is for that common writing task, and then we'll assess as a group of colleagues and professionals as we get through the year.
sounds good. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, Matt, that means the units are switched. And so that means if there was a book study associated with your global humanities, that's also going to switch. I think that might actually work out better for you guys. So you're going to have a back-to-back book study because you have Model UN that runs through quarter 3 and quarter 4. And so that might be helpful. You guys will let me know. Matt, you'll say, hey, Kelly, you know what? That was pretty tough, and doing a back-to-back book study didn't work out well. And so again, we'll make adjustments as we move into year 2 of implementation. If you are a World Study 6 teacher on here and you're asking yourself, what is Kelly talking about? I'm in the chat just responding to our colleagues who are global humanities. All schools should have global humanities now. Some schools have all students take global humanities. Some schools just keep them in a smaller cohort. So I'm just answering those questions right now. And so that's kind of where we're at. And yes, it allows you, Alexa, to have a less choppy experience with Model UN, which was also a goal. And so I hope that it does. And if it doesn't, you guys will let me know. And so I want you to understand, I think the biggest thing that I can have you guys understand is that it's okay if that it doesn't roll out as perfection for you, if that there's going to be some changes, if there's going to need to be some upgrades, and you might have to do those. I might not have captured everything that you need, and that's okay. And you can give me feedback and we'll make those adjustments as we move forward. But I want you to try as is. I want you to, roll out the curriculum and plan for it, because that's the best way we know what's going to work and what doesn't work. Because again, as you guys are already understanding, this was written in theory and you guys are about to give me reality. And so I want to make sure that we honor the reality that is important for all students too, because sometimes that feedback might not work for all. Okay, so let's keep moving to the framework. And this is the part where you're not going to have so much of me in your ear. You're going to have an opportunity to explore. But I do kind of want to go over some basics with you. The framework is a living document. It's going to sit on the social studies website. When you ask yourself with your PLC, okay, guys, what is it we're actually going to teach? How long are we going to teach it for? What are we supposed to do? I want you to go to the framework. The framework is your guide. It's going to tell you all of those things. This framework is aligned to MSDE and Common Core standards. This framework tells you what skills and what content you need to teach and for how long. And it has all the suggested resources and lessons that you can use with students. Should you want to make changes to the suggested resources and lessons, you have those capabilities and autonomy as a teacher. I know that what I write might not meet the needs of your ESOL, IEP, 504, highly gifted students. So you might need to make some adjustments. That is okay. What can't be made as an adjustment is you picking and choosing what objective gets taught in the framework. Those objectives are your standards. I've looked at the standards and we've crafted objectives to meet those standards. Those objectives cannot be missed. You can't just be like, you know what, lesson sequence 1 looks kind of boring. I don't want to do it. Unfortunately, we don't have that autonomy, but you do have the autonomy to say that lesson that Kelly wrote, not going to work out. I'm going to create something new with my PLC. Totally okay for you to do. And so you understand what I'm talking about, so you can have an opportunity to ask me follow-up questions. So you have an opportunity to kind of figure out what the heck is Kelly talking about. What I'm going to ask you to do right now is I'm going to ask you in just a moment is to open a copy of the framework. It's linked for you here. In slides 13 through 18, I've given you a lot of information to support your exploration of the framework. If you look at Unit 1 and Unit 1 only, I have to tell you that the framework just replicates itself. So how Unit 1 is laid out is exactly how 2, 3, and 4 will roll. Except we're just changing the content. So if you want to just live in Unit 1, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to ask you to link into that framework. I'm going to ask you to read and review those slides to support your exploration. And then if you have time, there's a Jamboard for you. And in the Jamboard, it will be an opportunity for me to see what you're confused about, what you're excited about, so I know that I could possibly replicate in these upcoming units, and what you are nervous about as you prepare for the rollout with your students of World Study 6. Okay, so slides 13 through 18 just complement your understanding of the framework. So before I push you to breakout rooms, do any of you have any questions about what you're going to be doing? Okay, where is?
So Kelly, we just want us to kind of preview the framework, take a look at how long we're spending on each time, and then kind of give you some feedback about if we have any questions about it or anything like that.
Yeah, Jason, is that you talking?
Yes.
Okay, so Jason, yeah, so slides 13 through 18 complement it. It gives you kind of some overviews and some nitty-gritty details of how to even read that framework that might be confusing. And I want you guys to have an opportunity to process that individually and with your colleagues before you process it with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to push you guys out into rando breakout rooms. Okay. Add some rooms. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Andrea, I'm not moving you. Here you go. You guys should be getting an invitation soon. Oh, I need to add a room. Okay, guys, give me 1 second. Probably the thing I hate the most about Zoom is the moving to rooms. Okay, they have 5, you're going to 5. Delia, here you go. Let's see, 5. Okay. Almost there, guys.
Mm,
Who did I miss? Who's in here with me? Oh, why are you
I
guys?
never got an invite.
I don't think you
I didn't
opened the
get it.
rooms.
Oh.
I think you added people to rooms. You didn't open them.
God, you guys are probably sitting there like, Kelly, get it together. How about I open those rooms? Here we go. All right, are they in? All right, here we go. Now I see people leaving.
Breakout rooms are my least favorite as
Oh my
well.
God. I'm so slow at it, Andrea. I'm like, oh no. It takes me a minute to get it going. And I even, you know what, Andrea, I even like practice and it still takes me a minute. Okay, how
Yeah.
long did I give them to this section?
And unfortunately, they say that you can pre-assign like before your meeting, but when you do it, it's not always there.
No, and I've done that too before. Andrea, let me tell you this. I got on at like 8:46. I'm so thankful. And I let some people in and I couldn't find the chat feature and I was like, where is the chat button? And
I know.
this happened to me before at our RT meeting, and we had to roll with it because everybody was on. And I had to close the meeting down and go into the settings. And I don't know why MCPS would do this and enable the chat feature. And I was like, why MCPS? Why? So that was my panic this morning. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, with technology, anything can go awry. So with Zoom, I learned a lot during the school year. You know, I was kicked out of my own meetings.
Oh my God. Were you just like, oh my God?
Yeah, I was. You know, my breakout rooms weren't there. I went through all the trouble of creating them before the meeting and assigning folks, went into the settings to do it. And, you know, it wasn't there. It was just. Whew.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I can't thank you enough for
Oh,
doing
no worries. I'm sorry. My computer, I told Maria that my computer is low on memory. So sometimes, like I was trying to copy and paste the agenda, and thankfully, because I was, you know, and it wasn't copying, so I had to leave, and then it copied, I guess I had copied I had a couple of tabs up, and nervously I copied the wrong one.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
That's okay. It happens. You know, like I stopped trying to pretend like I'm supposed to be like perfect on these. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Sometimes when I rolled out 7th grade, I'm like, I would just be a ball of nerves because I'm like, everything has to go perfectly. And then like it wouldn't, because that's just life, you know?
Right.
So I've definitely gotten over that with this World Study 6-1 about like everything having to be perfect. So you posted the wrong one. Oh well. Like we posted the right one. They're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went into the office yesterday.
I was just gonna ask why. It's like I heard a dumpster fire.
It is. It's sort of messing with my vibe.
Yeah. I would definitely like.
To be honest with you, I'm just like, who wants to work in all of this? There's
No,
boxes It's a hallway,
No,
trash in the hallway. Our office suite is boxes everywhere.
no. Hold on, I'm gonna pause this.
David got, a team leader position, go him. And so I was literally like 10 minutes later, I showed downstairs and I was like, excuse me, Mike, I have a request. And he was like, what? So I told him what I wanted. And he was like, really, Christine, it's only been 10 minutes. Like, I was like, you gotta.
You're like, hey, you gotta fight for it or it doesn't happen, right? Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had an opportunity to have some great conversation with your colleagues, to be able to process the framework with your colleagues. So I know that you might not have been able to do the Jamboard, but I wanted to have an opportunity to process together. Are there any pressing questions about how to read the framework, how to find resources in the framework, or questions in general related to the framework? Once we take kind of a stretch break, and if it's okay with you all, I'd like to possibly, depending on the conversation we have, might need to edit how long the stretch break is. But once we get through our stretch break, you're going to have an opportunity to do a deeper dive into a resource of your choice. And I have some focus that I'd like you to do with that dive. But for now, let's keep our brain on the framework. And is there any questions or clarifications I need to provide on the framework and how to use it and how to read it?
Brittany, ask your question.
About the common writing tasks versus common.
About quarter 3 and versus quarter 4.
Oh, switching economics and government. I was just curious. I know it was everybody voted on it. I don't know what like the main theme or main focus for essential enduring understandings for Unit 3 is how the economic and political systems influence one another, and how different forms of government tend to have different types of economies. So I was just curious for the rationale for the switch, or just I just feel like personally the economics unit tends to be the most challenging, and that usually the government unit kind of lays that foundation, that governments support the economy, provide public services, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the rationale that we had to fit in the writing tasks, right?
Yeah, Brittany, sorry, I cut you off. I heard everything you said. So Brittany is asking, for those that are wondering what was said, Brittany was asking, so what was the rationale behind the flip-flop to move China and the study of economics into Unit 2 and push Unit 3 as Greece and Rome? So the decision was made for a couple reasons. One, we had to take into account the content that was being covered in the units. And so we decided to make sure that through recommendations of the teacher work groups, and then through also conversation with Maria, supervisor, former supervisor, now director, with what would be best for students in terms of common writing tasks, high interest, writing and association. And so we moved quarter 3 purposefully as Greece and Rome to make sure that the common writing task was about a high interest topic based on teacher feedback. We also moved quarter 3 as Greece and Rome because of the pacing. So one of the things that we talked a lot about in the social studies office, and I talked with teachers, full disclosure, in terms of 6th grade, sometimes it felt like there was not a free-for-all, but getting through the content and doing the 1 unit, 1 quarter component or pacing wasn't happening in 6th grade. And where people tended to get bogged down was in high interest areas that, you found as a teacher high interest because of your interest as an educator you went to school for, or high interest that you have with your students. So we cut down and pared down unit 3 a lot to get you through the content, but also to keep you with the common writing task and keep that high interest. When you cover unit 2 with China and you cover economics, and we talk about the dynastic cycle, about how the political system is dependent upon the economic system working well, and the political system keeping or maintaining their power when there's a high level of economic resources. We front load and cover information in those lesson sequence to help students get the information that's needed to learn economics and the components of government that they're going to learn, with the understanding that you'll do a deeper dive when you get to unit 3. So if, Brittany, the short of the long, it was done for interest for the common writing task. It was done to help with the pacing of our World Study 6 teachers. Again, guys, I can't, stress this enough. We don't cover content. Our content isn't covered by the state, but we help to support 8th grade by the skills we cover and by the pacing that we do. 8th grade sets a hard pace. They have a lot to get through. 7th grade does the 1 unit, 1 quarter. We as 6th grade teachers need to make sure we are honoring the 1 unit, 1 quarter to the best of our ability. Is there times where you're like, I have to bleed over into 1 unit or 1 week of this quarter? Yes, that happens, and that's okay. But those were the rationales for why we made the switch that we did. Okay, Brittany, did that help answer your question?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Questions?
Kelly, there was a question from Allison. I'm not sure if you got that one about, will there be time to spend the first week on SEL?
Oh, thanks, Andrea. Yeah, so yes. So if you look at the pacing calendar, which I linked all the way at the end of the Google Slides, the pacing calendar has an opportunity for you guys to see how I've paced out the unit. In terms of how I used to teach and how I'm sure you're trying to utilize the year, is that first week is, I encourage you to use for SEL, for time to get to know your students, to make those relationship buildings, which happens throughout the year, but I know you front load a lot of that in that first week. So that first week, I left that open for you to do those icebreakers. I think I might have put the pre-assessment on that Friday, but if you push it till that Monday, that's okay. And there's ways to infuse social studies and icebreakers. I know you guys are experts and you have done this before, so I don't need to go through that with you, but yes, you will have time to do your SEL. Because I think also some of these I was, what's the word I'm looking for? I gifted you a little bit more time on some of these objectives that you might not need that additional time for. So I think you have a lot of flexibility in first quarter as we transition our students into quote unquote normal instruction in school. Does that help, Allison?
Yeah, that definitely helps. And thank you. The one question we had also as a kind of a follow-up was, and I know you said this a little bit, but like you said, like 10 sessions, 15 sessions, is that kind of on the high end or on the low end of what you're thinking?
That's a great question. I would say that I'm not sure yet. When I rolled out 7th grade, that was Maria and I theorizing. You guys will let me know if that's going to be on the high end or low end. I think for the session that has the common writing task, I put that on the higher end. But you'll let me know how much time you're actually going to need with students. And I think that those adjustments about lesson sequencing, I'll make for the whole if they impact the whole. If you yourself need to make those adjustments, Allison, a little bit more time on that objective, a little less time on an objective, that can happen. But if I need to make one for the whole of the group, if everybody's telling me, dude, Callie, lesson sequence 2, you need to add like 5 more sequences to it, or excuse me, sessions, then if I get that majority, I will. And then Terrence, one more question, go ahead.
Oh, it's less of a question, more of a comment, as somebody who has, rolled out the 7th grade stuff and saw the changes made and all the adjustments that you and Maria made. Yeah, some things go long, some things go short. You improvise, right? And central office has been nothing but supportive of me and listened to my comments that I've always made over the years. So yeah, feedback is really important. And yeah, do what you got to do.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. And I think that's, before we go on break, that's the last kind of thought that I'll leave you with is, again, that framework, what we hold you accountable to is the skills and content being covered in that framework. After we go on break, I'm going to point something out to you. That is what I'm holding you accountable for. What I will not, if I'm coming to your PLC to support, if I'm coming to observe a class, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, I wrote a lesson for this objective and they're not using it. You didn't like the lesson, you don't like the lesson, and you made something new with your PLC that met your students' needs. Fantastic. However, those resources written in there have provided an infusion of skills and content. So if you don't use that suggested resource or lesson, we ask that you make sure you are still covering the skill with students and giving an opportunity to participate. And I'll show you how you know that when we come back from break. Okay, so I'm gonna be here. I took my break, guys. When you went in your breakout rooms, please feel free to turn your camera off, mute yourself, go get a cup of coffee, go stretch. If it's okay with you all, can we make this a 6-minute break? Can we come back at 10:18? And if I will stay here in this room, so if you want to chat with me while we're on stretch break, feel free to do so.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
Jenny Page.
Hi, Jenny.
Nice
How are
to meet
you?
So I'm starting at Clemente
Yes.
with Sal, and just have a running list of things I'm not understanding.
Sure.
But one of the things that I'm taking 3 days of SEL training, August 9th, 10th, and 11th. And I don't understand the difference between that and like the question that was just posed from the colleague about, for the number of sessions each quarter, will there be time to spend the first week on SEL? So I'll figure all that out after I have the SEL training.
Yeah, so Jenny, you'll have the SEL training, which comes from the county. It's just providing you, an overview and resources of like the social emotional learning that we need to do to support our students. That's what they're asking about. In that first week of meeting your students, especially the beginning of the year, a lot of times teachers, because I know you're new to teaching, right?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of times teachers will spend that first week, getting to know student names, doing icebreakers with them, letting students meet and introduce themselves, to each other, letting them get to know you and things about you, classroom routines. Where do they put papers to turn in? Where do they pick up work? How do they come in when it's time to do a warm up? How do we give feedback? How do we work in groups? All of that information is usually what teachers kind of roll out that first week. It's like an overload for kids, right? They get 7 periods of learning this. And then in that second and third week, you transition into content, but I will tell you that you still are practicing those routines. You're still going over, kind of the processes. You might even have a warm up that asks them a fun question about themselves, but like that kind of sole focus sits in that first week. And that's what your colleagues were asking about. Can I still get through all those objectives and spend that first week doing SEL stuff with my kids? And the answer is yes.
Okay, wonderful. I think I clearly did all of that in the student teaching, from making the virtual locker and all of that.
Yeah, that's it. That's what they're talking about. I wasn't
putting the right name to it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, Natasha, I'm pulling something up.
Yeah, so in a couple of places in the new sources,
Mhm.
The way point of view is used looks like what I think of as claim. And so for the one that I sent you, down on the second part of that answer key where it has the connection to historical thinking skills for number 2 source, or excuse me, for number 2 close reading,
Yeah.
the type of questions about the point of view of the author and the type of evidence matched or provided to match the point of view, that feels to me like that's something that I would say claim, because it's the argument, and point of view at our school we've used to represent the impact of the author's background and experiences on their lens or interpretation or perspective on the evidence or the claim. And so I wasn't sure whether there's a shift in how we're looking at point of view, or whether.
I'm going to pull something up right now to help answer that for you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure point of view falls under close reading as students really take a deep dive. No problem, Alexa. You do you. I know you're in orientation.
And
So
it tends to fall under point or under close reading because, or actually under sourcing. It's more the question of the author's argument based on the evidence is the claim, right?
yeah.
So for that OTC, I'm going to give you one more thing. For the OTC student source, there's a question about what is the author's point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that definitely falls under sourcing. So that is a miscategorization on my part then. Because I know we've talked about point of view, Maria and I, in close reading as well. And if I pull it up, it's going to have some things about that. But that's just a miscategorization that
I don't actually think it is. I think actually it's just a typo. I think point of view should say claim. I think it should, like, I think when you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so when it says, sorry, on part 2, it says the type of questions about the point of view of the author, you're saying the claim of the author instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Oh yeah. Oh yes, I see, because it was just like, I see what you're saying, and I'm sorry that took me a second longer than it needed to be.
No, and so similarly though, for student source 1, that's the second thing I put in there.
Yeah.
On the reflection questions, it says, what is the point of view of the author on how Otzi died? I think that's going to be a tough question. So I think I think the real question that's being asked there is, what is the claim? Because that the kids can get to. What is the author arguing on the cause of death? Mm-hmm. But I don't think they can get to point of view because there's not enough in there to show the author's perspective based on his background and experiences. And I just worry it's going to get confusing for teachers and for students. There's going to be a conflation of point of view and claim in a way that we don't want to make them the same thing, because again, your point of view impacts your claim, but it's not the same thing as your claim, unless I have it off.
No, I'll be honest with you, Natasha, I can't totally sit and process what you just said with everybody, like with us getting started to go back on, but I'm pulling up both documents and I'm looking at the questions, and I'm going to go back and see if I need to make adjustments and go back into my notes to see what Maria and I talked about to make sure that we're on the same page. And if I need to provide a further clarification for you, or if I just need to make some adjustments,
Gotcha. Yep, perfect.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's
okay, good. So Natasha, yeah, I'll get back to you on this, on what adjustments or changes that I've made. I'll do that by the end of the week. So like once I get through today and tomorrow, Thursday I have, I'm on an interview panel, so that's my day. So most likely Friday, I'll be able to sit and really look at this and then make any adjustments that need to be made.
Yeah, no rush at all. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm on the same page.
No, it's a good rush to have, right? You want to make sure that you're preparing, and I want to make sure that that information is correct for everybody. So it's definitely a priority rush. Don't worry. You'll get some sort of response this week. I promise.
Thanks.
Going along with what Natasha was mentioning, I just recalled during our pre-assessment when the organizer had point of view, a lot of kids put first person, second person, third person, like for perspective, like in English class, like are they writing in the first person using I? So maybe like perspective, or I like the claimant, like what's the author's claim and evidence, like what claims can you make based off of?
Yeah, so Brittany, I'll look at that again, but that's definitely in that pre-assessment, that's what we want to find out. Like what do they know and what do they not know? Like how are they understanding or categorizing information? Are they looking at it as like English version or like, you know, how English uses it, or do we need to clarify further? So I'm not sure how much adjustments I'll make to that, because that's the whole purpose of that, is to see how the kids process that. And then we as social studies have to make those adjustments or clarify that information for them. So I'm not sure how much I'll change on that, but I will look at it. So I'll get back to you on that. I just put pre-assessment down on there. Okay. Is that good, Brittany, that I can get back to you?
Absolutely. I was just commenting, like adding on to what Natasha was saying about what conceptual errors that the kids have.
Absolutely. And that's important for us to know. And like you said, and like Natasha said, we want to make sure that we're using the same language and we're pushing out an understanding for students as well. So I got that on my list, those two things to look at for you guys right now, and I'll get back to you on that. Brittany, I'm just writing your name down, and Natasha. And if it's a clarification I need to do for all guys, I will. But I'm just writing names down so I can make sure I at least reach out to them. All right, so we're back, and I'm gonna share my screen again. And
actually, Kelly, I did have a quick question. I was trying to get in.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dee Dee, please.
Just briefly, can you speak about the sessions that, you know, in the notes it says that a session is 45 minutes, and I was even starting to look at the planning calendar. We have block schedules, so we have 90 minutes every other day, and so that's always the challenge of how to interpret what's written versus our reality of every other day classes and for a much longer time.
Yeah, so I mean, Dee Dee, I would look at it like this. So like if it's 45-minute sessions, so like let's say 6.1.1.1, our number notation that I'm using. Let's say 6111 is slated to be two sessions, right? And I've sequenced it out as two 45-minute class periods on the calendar. And you teach a 90-minute block. That means that objective might take you one 90-minute block. And then you're moving on. The next time you see your students, you're moving on to 6112, which maybe was slated for 3 45-minute sessions. So maybe 6112 takes you a block and a half to get through. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I know that, but like in reality, that doesn't always work, where you're trying to do, you know, two days worth of work in one class period, just especially in this year of kids coming back and not being, that was their main suggestion, is for the teachers to slow down. Mm-hmm. That, you know, so it's just that kind of tug of war of how you're going to compensate for kids not necessarily being ready to move any faster, and then just your whole time constraint. I mean, I'm already, I can feel the pressure already.
Oh, Dee Dee, I don't like that feeling. I know that feeling. I feel that pressure in a different way, right? I feel that pressure from you all, and just in terms of wanting to make sure I'm giving you the best that I can give. So I know that pressure. It just, yours manifests in a different way with students and trying to get that out. So this is what I'll tell you, Dee Dee. The best I can tell you is, first and foremost, students come first, right? And you know your students best. And if you have to slow some things down or speed some things up for them, then you do that. And if that means that, you know, an objective, you know, you've condensed and you've embedded with something else, then that's what happens. And sometimes that happens because, again, you know how to sequence out your block, as opposed to me, who sits in the office and writes this all up. Additionally, and I think Dee Dee brings up a really good point, is that we are transitioning back in from a pandemic, and we are transitioning back in with students who may have not been in a school building since summer of spring of fourth grade. That is a reality that you guys are up against. So you absolutely have grace and empathy, and you work on those SEL lessons, and you take the direction of your administrators. And if they want certain things incorporated, and that means you have to slow down the curriculum, then that's what you have to do. And just know that that's more important, our students' mental health and social emotional health, than it is pounding some objectives through to them. So I will wholeheartedly support that. And if that needs to happen, then that needs to happen as we transition students back in. So Dee Dee, and your block scheduling, if it looks a little different as it plays out, then it looks a little bit different. But I think the message that you send to your teachers and for yourself in 6th grade is that at the end of the day, however I roll out these objectives match with a quarter. So I know, my PLC and I know, as we back map, that these are the objectives that are going to take over our quarter. How much time and light we give to these objectives, that's what you guys map out based on your schedule. And I'm sorry you don't have a better fix for that.
Oh, no, thanks, Kelly. Yep, thank you.
Yeah. What I did want to direct your attention to, that I did link in the slides for you, is this skills framework. Every time I talk about skills, some of you who have not taught 7th and 8th grade, or some of you who are new to social studies or new to the county, might be like, what is the skills that Kelly's talking about? This is what drives and directs what students should be doing in terms of reading and writing skills. So you'll notice that Q1 common writing test that we will do a deep dive. That is our sole focus for tomorrow's training together, because I know people will have multiple questions about that. And I wanted to give that and honor that. And so we'll talk that tomorrow, but that's why Q1 common writing task is only a paragraph. That is what has been designated by this skills framework. Should you be a global humanities teacher and do a DBQ with your students beyond this paragraph writing, that's your business, and that's okay. And that's how the course was designed. You'll also notice in the writing skills that this well-developed paragraph is not asking for an analytical thesis statement. That analytical thesis statement does not come in until Q2, 3, and beyond. And so students will be introduced to analytical thesis skill writing in Q2. The expectation that they know how to write an analytical thesis, or that should be incorporated into their writing, is not a reality or expectation you should have for students unless you have explicitly taught it and given time to practice. And so that's my soapbox I will stand on with the skills. You cannot assess students on skills that you haven't explicitly taught and given time to practice, which is why in the framework, I wanted to make sure that you all saw, and sometimes there's a lag with this, so forgive me if my scrolling goes a little bit slower. In this, there is a lesson sequence progression, and I'll pull this up for you, but I want to make sure that this is highlighted. This lesson sequence progression also exists for Q2. It's so important that you take notice of this. If you don't like the resource or the lesson that I've created, fine. If you don't like the suggested processes that we've put in there, fine. What we ask is if you and your PLC, with your expertise as World Studies 6 teachers, decide to not use the resource or lesson, that you're also conscious of the skill that was put in there to help students practice before they get to the writing component. A lot of claim and evidence in Unit 1. I don't know what skills students are coming to the table with. Your students might be on writing a claim, identifying a claim, matching evidence to it. So you'll make some adjustments. But we ask that if you decide to cut the grapes lesson, but you're still teaching that objective, that you make sure that they get the skills practice needed. Matt, please, I can see you on the screen, so go for it.
So for the skills, for the writing skill for Unit 1, it says formulating a thesis statement. And then for Unit 2, it says analytical thesis statement. So for Unit 1, are you really saying formulate a claim? And then Unit 2, it's analytical?
Yeah, so that's always the hard part. And that's the splitting hairs, Matt, that we've had conversations with in 7th and 8th and beyond with teachers. Yeah, I see a thesis statement as a claim statement, right? So that's what the students are going to write to, then provide their evidence. When we get to the analytical thesis in 2, 3, and 4, it's that claim statement that buckets those components into two, gives 2 additional reasons to go with it. You know, summer is the best because I get to swim and hang out with friends. That's their analytical thesis. And then their essay beyond should cover paragraph 1 should be about pool and paragraph 2 should be about hanging with friends. Does that make sense?
So like unit 1, Hammurabi's code was just. Unit 2, Hammurabi's code was just because blank and blank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Matt, for that clarification. And again, Matt's bringing up writing, which we will talk again more tomorrow, but feel free to ask questions. That's okay. I don't want you to feel like you don't have an opportunity to process with me. And I know our time is coming down to the 30-minute mark, but I do want to have an opportunity for this next piece. So I'm gonna move away from the skills for a minute, and I'm gonna go back to our slides, and I wanna highlight some things for you. And so what I'm gonna ask you to do right now is I wanted you to have an opportunity to kind of explore, and I would tell you, I said unit 1 or unit 2. I would say stick with unit 1, kind of focus because that's where you're moving towards first, but pick a resource to dive into, pick a common instructional task to dive into, pick the common assessment task to dive into. And when you do, I wanted you can thank your 7th grade colleagues for this because your 7th grade colleagues taught me a lot, right? About putting together a curriculum for teachers and students that works well. And so in the framework and in the lessons and in the supports that exist for teachers, you guys have the lesson skills progression that I shared. You have teacher guides to the document. You have answer keys. You have annotated guides for students. You have ESOL supports. You have completed sample products of what the assessment or product could look like, modern day connections, and choice for students. I put those all in there so you didn't have to look for them, create them on your own, and to help with your processing of the resources and help with your students' processing and understanding of the resources and goals. So as you look through the materials, kind of just be mindful of that so you can see them and know that they're there for you, but feel free to ask clarification questions should you need to. So I'm going to push you back out to your groups, and in pushing you back out to your groups, you can all choose to pick one resource together to dissect and look at. You can do it individually. If you like to process on your own, stay in the main room with me. Be like, Kelly, I'm not going out with my colleagues. I want to process on my own. No problem. Don't accept the invitation to push out with your colleagues. But I'm going to ask you to go and to discuss and process a resource, or again, more questions about the framework with your colleagues. And then if time permits, the Jamboard again is there for you to process about what product or skill or process that was created for students do you think is going to work really well? And what product or process that was written into the curriculum that you think students might need additional support on, and you're like, hey, alert, I'm going to have to do XYZ for my students. I already know that they're going to need this additional support. And that's great. It might be helpful to your colleagues to see that as well. So slide 21 was just to kind of direct your focus. Slide 20 is where I'm giving you the directions. You're going to look at something of your choice. You're going to discuss and reflect with colleagues, and then we're going to come back as a whole group to debrief your findings. Are there any questions on what we're doing now? Rachel, thank you. Rachel's like my guide. The thing that you're not supposed to do when you're like teaching, right? You take like the voice of one student, you're like, oh yeah, they answered, everybody knows it. I'm taking like the voice of Rachel and that's it. I'm like, oh, Rachel said no questions. I'm gonna keep moving. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because Rachel clearly said we're all good. So that's how we roll. And I'm gonna push you guys back out into breakout rooms. Mike, you had asked me a question. Yes, so Mike, Judy, Justin, can you all stay in the room? Don't accept my invitation for the breakout room, okay? Just stay in the room. Mike Tucci, Judy, and Justin, stay with me. And yeah, Mike, I'll take care of it. So don't accept my invitation. Okay, Mike and Judy and Justin, you guys want to be in your own little world, yes? Okay. So I'm going to move you right now. Give me 1 second. Let me find you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Mike. Okay, I'm going to move you to room 11 because it's open. Mike, there you go. Okay. Where are you? Judy, do you remember what breakout room you were in and why I can't see you?
7.
7. Thank you. Oh, there you are. I'm moving you right now to 11. And Justin, what breakout room were you in?
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay.
Unsurprisingly. No, actually, you know what? I think it was 1.
Oh, yep, you're totally right. And I'm moving you to 11 right now. Bye. Okay, and those that are staying, you can process individually. I will honor that processing time, but I'm also here as a support if you need that as well.
Perfect. I was going to ask you a question, Kelly.
Yeah, go for it.
I was looking over the Q1 CWT, and I had some questions about semantics of words, and I just want to kind of process that with you. So I was looking at the World Studies rubric. So thesis. I wanted to ask a follow-up question about thesis. So are we saying thesis statement is answering the question with a reason?
Yeah.
And then analytical thesis, I thought had to have 3 reasons, or is it just 2 reasons plus?
Yeah, 2 reasons plus. So we see an analytical thesis statement, and it's really dependent on the question too, Matt. Like, it's really hard to pin down an analytical thesis statement and say it has to have 3 buckets, 4 buckets, right? It's really dependent upon the question, but in the social studies office, we see it as a minimum of 2 buckets, right?
Okay.
And so the question that they'll answer in, Q3 common writing task is about, the fall of Rome, right? And so I can't even think of the question, but it will, students will be able to say like money, war, whatever, right? And they'll have multiple, responses that they can give in their analytical thesis statement. The same for Unit 2. The Unit 2, they practice a DBQ, and it's about the fall of the Han Dynasty, and they can break it up into, political, economic, cultural, whatever related to the dynastic cycle. And their response. But for the first one, for Unit 1, you're right, it's literally going to be the laws were just or they were not just. And that's their statement. And then they move forward from there.
Cool. So my so then here's where I get to semantics. What is more appropriate, or does it really not matter? I'm looking at the peer edit for the CWT. And it says claim the thesis, which so to me it shouldn't say claim in red and then sub thing the thesis. It should be the thesis, right? Because it's a claim plus their supporting argument. And that was my second question. I always used reason instead of argument. Is it pretty much the same thing, or
I'm
argument?
going to mute myself because my dog is going to want to like join in the fun.
Can I jump in for a sec too? And I think that part of the confusion that you're having is the peer edit sheet isn't just for that first quarter. So my understanding, and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, is that for this first common writing task, they don't need a claim plus supporting argument. They just need a claim. But because that's the generic peer editing as you go forward and get, so for that first one, you could take out everything underneath claim.
Well, I mean,
So it is claim plus one supporting reason. It's very,
yeah, they definitely need to provide evidence and reasoning. Like they're writing, like if they're writing like that perfect paragraph, right? They're going to make a claim, they're going to provide evidence, and they're going to use information from, their sources to provide that evidence. And then they're going to give a rationale as to why, that evidence matches or supports that claim. That's the perfect paragraph. They should be doing that in each paragraph as they learn to write.
Right. Focusing just on the claim statement or the thesis statement. For this first writing, is it sufficient just for them to say Hammurabi's code is just?
Yes.
Period, full stop, right?
Yeah.
So Matthew, they don't need a reason. That's when you get into the analytical thesis statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking like thank you, Natasha. Yeah, absolutely. So that hard stop of it's just or not just, that's their claim, that's their thesis, that's their statement, right? They're anything beyond that is their evidence. Like Natasha said, if we were going into an analytical thesis, Hammurabi's code is just because of, I don't know, horses and pizza, right? And like that's what they were going to have as their supporting evidence in paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, but we're not moving beyond a paragraph. So,
and Kelly, I think part of the confusion there is because the sample student actually has given an analytical thesis statement with one supporting argument.
Who would do that? Who writes those student samples? Damn it, Kelly.
So if it just stopped after Hammurabi's code is unjust, period, then I think teachers wouldn't think that their kids need to have that supporting argument as well.
Yeah, and you know what? It's again on my list to go back and me stop trying to look like I'm like an A student and make an A student paper, right? That might be something your students do beyond that, but that's a great point, Matt and Natasha, for clarification. I have somebody asking me to join a breakout room, guys, so can you just give me a minute?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi guys, I'm just listening to the conversation. I'm Mendoza, and so I see, and I'm so glad, Matthew, that you brought out the clarification for the claim and the thesis, and Natasha, that was a great evidence from the resources that Kelly provided for us for today. And I think I just love how in details we are, because for some students it's they come into 6th grade and they can write the analytical, thesis right off the bat. And we have some students who are struggling with, just their claim. But having just, focusing on the paragraph at the beginning and then, giving them the practice for that really helps them and sets them up for success later in the school year. But if I have a student that it's able to write an analytical thesis right for Hammurabi's code, should they be punished? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're already exceeding the expectations for that assignment.
And I think they 100% could exceed. I wish the county would stick with claim, because I think it's going to get confusing if we call the claim in some places a thesis statement, and then there's the analytical thesis statement. I think kids are going to struggle. So if it was just the argument with no supporting arguments, or with no supporting subclaims. And I think if we stuck with the vocabulary of claim, and then the thesis statement is the claim plus the subclaims, that would be clearer.
Yeah, I see your point. Then we can maybe modify the checklist if we're, presenting it to the students, so they know that, this is the claim, but then later when we introduce the thesis, the claim is part of the thesis.
This is my first time seeing subclaim. I don't understand what that's.
It's your supporting arguments. It's your, I think you called them reasons. I can't remember what you called them, but it's the same
That's
thing.
what I called them, reasons.
We call them buckets. It's very efficient.
Yeah.
When I went for
That's-
the training, the guy for I forget his name from the DBQ, from the DBQ binders that we have, I attended one of the trainings, and so he would say, okay, you have your thesis, and then you have your arguments, and then for each argument you have to provide, your evidence and justifications. And so the evidence should be short, and the justification should be like 60% of of the argument. So that's the way he would say it. And then the buckets and the chicken foot strategy, all of that, came from the DBQ project. The buckets were, I thought, like from the buckets, we then developed those arguments, right? Because the buckets kind of helped us visually organize our understanding of the answers.
Yeah, each bucket has a label, and that's your supporting argument, and the evidence goes in your bucket.
So I'm reading the student sample response, and I'm seeing like Hammurabi's code was not just. So Matt, to your point, Natasha's point, yeah, if a student put that, Hammurabi's code was not just. That's the claim that they're making. However, they have to have a rationale behind why it's not. And I tagged mine in there. I still wouldn't see this as an analytical thesis, because I'm not bucketing multiple, but like I put my rationale in that continuation of that claim. Like Hammurabi's code was not just, and I'm saying it wasn't just because it didn't give rights to women, right? But like kids are going to have to say beyond, when you talk to them, if their claim is Hammurabi's code was not just, why? What makes you think what you think? And if you don't center them with like beyond, if they don't get centered with like narrow your thoughts down, they're going to be all over the paper, right? They're going to be all over their writing and they can't figure it out. So I would tell them, I know you guys were talking about bucket, but like select one reason why you think it wasn't just or it was just, and roll with that, because they're going to have that in there. You're going to have some of your writers who are going to know to streamline that in. And as you teach writing, you're going to have some of your writers who are like, I made a claim that the claim was it wasn't just. Okay, but now you have to explain why and use evidence from the text. It's that dance that we do with the kids, right? And trying to, sorry guys, I'm doing two things at once, and trying to make them see like how it all kind of comes together. And I know I just came in on your conversation again, Natasha, and I don't know who else you were talking to, but yes.
Thank you for the clarity. So the CWT is claim with one supporting reason, and if I hear you correctly, reason and argument are synonyms. It really doesn't matter what you use. Is that correct? Because that's what I emphasize with students is, what are your reasons for your claim?
Yeah, you're like what makes it true, right? Like, and right. I know we use our words to get students to that point, and the social studies with that rubric and with our writing, and how honestly, Matt, the performance matters get set up for, importing your scores, which we'll talk about tomorrow. I know you won't be here. Yeah. Yes. So Matt, I know you won't be here, but like those scores are optional this year. We're not pushing people to put that in quarter one. Like we're giving grace to teachers, giving grace to students. But yeah, like, when you say, how do you know this to be true? What's your proof? You're asking for evidence. And when you ask them, well, how do you know this evidence is a good match? That's their reasoning. So it's like, you picking up that language to use with them and them picking up that language as well, because right. It's the same language that's used in 7th to the same language that's used in 8th. And then honestly, 9th, 10th, and 11th as well was written that way too. So it's just retooling our language, but you have it. You're teaching writing and you're doing exactly what, we're all doing. Your just language isn't, fine-tuned to what social studies has been doing. And that's why we have the new curriculum to get everybody kind of fine-tuning their language.
So you want me to use argument instead of reason? Just
no, I think you can. I mean, we use reasoning in the rubric, like your reasoning, your rationale. Right. I think that it's okay to use those, but I think, this is always the tricky part, right? Is when you're assessing students using that rubric that we use,
Yeah, I'm
you know,
looking.
and they see that language, do they know what that language means? And so if you have to say, you know, reasoning is really your argument, or your rationale, or your evidence is your argument, however you want them to see that, Matt, is fine. But I just don't want them to get to the writing rubric and be like, what does this mean? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
That's why I'm asking these questions, because you know, the old curriculum didn't have really clear rubrics.
it didn't.
So I created really clear, color coded, specific
That's
rubrics,
awesome, Matt.
and it's very close to this.
Mhm.
That's why I'm seeking to get clarification, because it's close, and so I want to do, you know, I want to do what's, I guess, best.
Yeah. Matt, before I pull everybody in,
Yeah.
number one, I'll offer out, if you want to do like a Zoom or me to meet with you in person to just look at your rubrics. But I would say, you know, it's fantastic that you have those rubrics. I would use those rubrics that we have from the office as you move forward, because that's the same ones used in 7th and 8th.
Right.
If you want to talk about language or tweaking, I absolutely will sit and help you with that. But I would use the ones from the office as you move forward, especially in 1 and 3, because they go into a database.
Right.
For 2 and 4, if you're only using pieces of the rubric because that's where you want students to be, that's okay, you know. But I would definitely transition your assessing of students into that language from the rubric and from the skills.
Yep. So yeah, that's why I'm asking questions, and it would be great for us to talk another time. So I want
tomorrow I'm sure we'll hit those, Matt.
Yeah.
And you can you know, I'm sure you can see the recording. But if you know, you and I need to do like further clarification, or you just want to talk it through, that's fine too. I have no problem doing that, getting on a call or coming out to you at Newport, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good memory.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah, no, that would be helpful, because like you said, I intend on, you know, using these rubrics going forward. I'm not like, you know, want to hold on to my stuff or say it's better, but I'm just trying, this is the lens that I have. And so I'm trying to process, how does that fit in? How does it align? What is it?
And you might have processes for students giving feedback to one another and reflecting. Vicky, I totally see your hand too, so I'll be with you in a second. But you might have processes that work better than what is written in for the writing components. Don't throw those out. Use those still, but you might just need to check your language in them, right? Or, you know, if you're giving kids a rubric, check that rubric to see how it aligns to what we're putting out from the social studies office.
Yes.
So
it's important.
Yeah. And so once again, don't throw out your processes. If you have a better process for students providing feedback, for discourse, whatever, please use that. Don't feel like what I have is the ultimate authority. No, it's just suggestions for people, because sometimes as educators, we see something and we're like, how else could we do this? So it's an option for something, how else you could reach students or work with students, right? But I know you and our colleagues on here are experts that have other ways of doing things, and that's okay too. But what we really need to make sure we're aligned with is the standards and the language that we're using for our students across the board, to ensure we're aligning with 7th and 8th and beyond. So that's it, Matt. That's my story for you. Welcome back, everybody. I know you're back, and I know our time is slowly coming to an end, or I should say quickly coming to an end. This stuff always goes so fast. I know some of you might have some questions, and feel free. Again, I'm going to stay on the call afterwards. You're more than welcome to stay on the call and pick my brain. We'll also have time tomorrow to dive deeper into conversations about writing and reading, and as we look at the common writing task. But where I want to be right now is the conversation related to anything that came out of, sorry, I'm looking at slides right now, so that means my I'm not a multitasker. So give me 1 second. Let's see if there's anything in here. No. Okay. So kind of where I want to be right now is the MVP, of your group, right? And it doesn't have to be a person. It stands for most valuable point. What was said in your group that you think should be shared for the whole of all of our colleagues that are on this call? What is it that was shared related to a process, product, the content, or just an idea that you think would benefit our colleagues? So I'm going to ask that you unmute yourself. Feel free to unmute yourself and share your MVP from your discussion, most valuable point that you want to share.
I have a random request from my group. It's Matt wanted me to ask, is there a way to get our curriculum in paper form? Like if it could be sent to Copy Plus and there'd be a cute little Copy Plus number that we could request. That was brought up in my group.
Thanks, Miss Bud. I don't know your first name. Miss Bud, who are you?
My name's Capri. I'm from Neilsville.
Hey, Capri. Thanks for asking that question. Yeah, I know, guys, you're so used to, and I was too, right? That beautiful binder where like everything was like laid out for you and you had it and you were like, oh, my binder. And then when they switched you to a new grade level, you're like, I'm taking my binder with me still. Or maybe I just did that and I'm, you know, the crazy one, but I think we have some other paper people on here as well. I will tell you that you could possibly try to print it all out and send it to Copy Plus to make something for you. We from the social studies office won't. And I just tell you that because it's a living document, right? So there's always going to be changes that I make throughout the year. And every time you open that document, it will populate with like updates, changes that you see from me. So if you put it in the binder, you don't get to see those things. You won't have that. However, if your brain processes that way, right? And you're like, darn it, Kelly, I need that paper copy. Print out the framework and print everything that goes with it. And you send that off to Copy Plus for yourself, or you just print it out for yourself. I just know that we in the social studies office will not do it because it is a living document. And that's the only way we can make sure that those are additional changes. Dee Dee, I see you. Give me 1 sec. So
I'm just gonna.
Yeah, go ahead, Dee Dee. Is it about paper copies?
Yeah, it's about the printing that I did that 2 years ago with the 8th grade, and I'm telling you, I didn't use it. That once you get into it and the things are starting to kind of not necessarily change, but you're in the first, CIT, then you are using it right from your computer and you refer back to the document. I never went to that binder, and I'm like, I spent so much time printing. So
thanks, Dee Dee. That's a good tip. I know we have a lot of 7th and former 7th or current 7th and 8th grade teachers on here, and they've been through the run. My new to 6th grade or just having a new curriculum rollout. I apologize if this feels overwhelming. We don't want you to feel overwhelmed, but definitely that framework is your guide. Start at the objectives and move your way down, and you click on the resource and the resource populates for you. But again, it's your comfort level. So if you need to print, by all means print, but don't forget to refer back to the social studies website from time to time so you can catch your updates. Other points that you would like to have or clarify with me? Is it Slovenia? Did I say it right?
Almost. Slaviana.
Slaviana. Thank you,
Yes.
Slaviana, for correcting me. Yes. What point that you would like to make or question for clarification?
Yes, I am just in terms of immersion and the French material. Would it be possible to include it in the same folders, because that way it's all in one place, as opposed to trying to navigate 2 different sites and trying to find matching documents? It's a lot of
toggling.
work.
Yeah. Okay. Done. I haven't uploaded anything yet. I know that they're almost done. So absolutely, I can, when I go to 6.1.1, if there's anything translated underneath that, I will put the French or Spanish immersion documents. So you are just clicking on those as well. So you're not toggling and several locations. Done.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. If that makes your life easier, then I will gladly support that. Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question about whether the documents would be in Canvas for us to download into our classes.
They will not. I keep them, Allison, in that one spot. So if you want them in Canvas, if you want them in your Google Classroom, we ask that you upload it to whatever platform it is that you're using that you need. Who else had their hand?
I had my hand.
Yo, Vicky, yes, Vicky, go for it.
No, yeah, I was gonna wait till after, but I think everyone would benefit. So Global Humanities, are we still treating that curriculum as, is the expectation that it's kind of like an addendum, or are we treating it as its own curriculum? Because I'm at a school where everybody takes humanities, so I'm wondering,
that's a
what
great question,
should I
Vicky.
do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a lot of the questions we've had about Global Humanities. By the way, Vicky, stay on here. If you want to hear the response to Vicky, great, stay on. It is 11:01 and I like to honor people's time. If you don't, and you're like, peace, Kelly, I'm done, please check out slide 23 and 24. There's a feedback survey, so I can prep for tomorrow to make sure I'm using processes that you guys most love, and then resources for you to help with your planning as you move into your PLCs. However, I'm on here, stay on if you have time, and I will answer Vicky's question right now. If you're a Global Humanities school and you have every class taking Global Humanities, your framework is the World Study 6 framework. That's what you go off of. Okay. You use the Global Humanities as an addendum. When you get to certain parts and you're like, yeah, I need to make sure that my kids are using XYZ, you pull those in from Global Humanities. You do the book study, you add extra writing assessments if you can, Vicky, and you do all those things that are part of Global Humanities, but you use the World Study 6 as your guide and framework. Those are the objectives that you're meeting. Those materials in the Global Humanities folders meet those objectives, so you can just replace them as you go through.
Okay.
Does that make
Sounds
sense?
good. Yes.
Okay. How's life at Cabin John?
Great.
Okay,
You should stop by.
I will. I know you're a new AP, so.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I used to work with him.
Wait, hold on. We have two new APs. Which one?
I know Casey Siddons.
Oh, Siddons. He was my consulting teacher, by the way.
Oh, he was. Okay, so Siddons is like a World Study 6 genius, so use him.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Susan,
awesome.
have a good day. Bye, Rachel. Yes, he is. He did World Study 6 for like 8 years, so like lean on him. He knows his stuff. He has some really cool ideas too.
Good to know.
Yeah,
Bye, thank you, everybody.
Here too.
Well, and he is amazing.
Yeah, he is a genius.
Yeah, Casey Siddons is pretty awesome, guys. So
yeah, he was.
Vicky, you haven't lucked out.
Yeah, he was my consulting teacher, first year teacher at Key, and I was surprised to see him at Cabin John. I had no idea he was one of the new APs. So I'm really excited.
Cool.